themselves out. It's almost like that's the priority. And the more wily riders, those with a bit more experience, definitely check themselves out first. But here is our breakaway. Now let's do them the honour, shall we, of going through them. This is not a bad breakaway. As I say, a good mix of strength and experience. Christian Corrin from Adri Mobil. That is he number 106. He's on the front at the moment. Very lively. Won the Grand Prix Camaiore a few years ago. Well, actually quite a few years ago these days. But national champion of Slovenia back in 2022. I think that was almost up there with his biggest wins. He's done things in Picardy and Gran Primero as well. The Bruno Begoli, I remember calling that race when Valerio Conti won, and Christian Corrin was heartbroken not to have got up there. Ilnur Zakarin, sweet, remember him?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was also very, very busy that day to Monte Veglio. And that was a very, very peaky day. So Christian Corrin will have no fear about today. And he's a good all-rounder. Does a bit of everything.
Yeah, the thing is, he was at World Tour level before in 2010. So he was at Liquigas, then Cannondale. And he's only just left kind of Bahrain 2 years ago and ended up at Adri Mobil. So he's definitely got the most experience at this kind of level. So hopefully be imparting that knowledge to his companions.
Well, I think he might well be keeping much of it to himself. Let's see. Because he's going to believe that this day, without being too much of a stretch, let's just say I think he'll be the last man surviving here. He was a teammate of Peter Sagan back in the day. Peter Sagan, I think, signed up for Liquigas 2011. I remember him still being very much a young man and annoying the hell out of people like...
everybody.
Yeah. He did, actually.
Yes.
Even within his own team. Vincenzo Nibali was particularly irked by Sagan's antics. And I imagine Christian Corrin was as well, because Christian Corrin took his leave soon after.
Well, the thing with that is when somebody like Peter Sagan comes along and makes it all look so easy and much fun, and there's a kind of joy to them, while you're somebody like Vincenzo Nibali who has to take things seriously because he's a GC rider, and it's at that stage it was a lot more committed in terms of how serious you had to be. And somebody like Peter Sagan comes along and is pulling wheelies and making faces, and he when he wins races he's doing the Hulk and things like that. I can imagine if you're a kind of serious person, it would be really annoying.
Absolutely. Well, he's got a very nice smiley picture as Christian Corrin on his profile, which you can find on Pro Cycling Stats. I always like to give the boys at Pro Cycling Stats a bit of an up. They do work very hard at making sure that the data is where it needs to be for us. We also have Marvin Hamajide racing here, number 135 in the green. There he is. And let's check him out, shall we? He's got a bit of a sprint on him. Been sort of Eastern Bloc races are where he's thrived, but usually in the sport of others, I must say. And I feel like he's possibly a bit outclassed by those who are around him. So he's done well in Albania and Serbia and the like. And Zegeland, I note. Well, we're dwelling on the Croatian champion, as I'm sure you can imagine why, as he just goes for the back pocket here. It's not that dissimilar from the British champ's jersey, I must admit, so for the checkerboard, which is a fetching addition in this part of the world. 60 kilometres per hour zone, no chance of breaking that today, I wouldn't have thought. And once again, we just sail down the coast and give you a little look. Bit of picture break-up today, nothing serious. And everyone absolutely solidly together. I didn't get any news on anyone lost, did you, pick up from yesterday's crash?
There have been two people. Max Dens of Maloya Pushbikes didn't finish. And during the stage, Stefan Kovar abandoned as well from Hinko Adriatics.
Yes, I believe that was with illness, wasn't it?
So we lost one during the stage.
And one in advance.
And one in that final crash. I don't think he didn't finish. Denge didn't finish, so he was obviously quite badly hurt there.
Well, hope he's okay. And looking back down the line here, Jayco yesterday, they put one man on the front, just going through Indian Grenadiers team. It's strong. And in fact, there's virtually no weakness. And while we are dwelling on it, certain Mr. Sheffield, my hometown, so I'll naturally be rooting for him. But yeah, he comes from slightly further away, does our Magnus. In fact, Pittsford in the United States. As our Croatian champion, we'll be seeing more of him and his impeccably trimmed beard later on. However, Magnus Sheffield today doesn't have a kick on him, so unfortunately, if he does come to the line with Mate Mohoric, he might find himself a bit outclassed when it comes to a sprint. Ethan Hayter, I think, would probably be the better bet. However, Magnus Sheffield is the sort of person who can go very, very long. He's a good time trialist. He's also a good climber. So if you're looking for a surprise from Ineos Grenadiers, in fact, if they were to let somebody off the leash, someone like Magnus Sheffield would be absolutely ideal. There's plenty of others within their team. In fact, I marked them up, and I can't see a weak link. The only person who's not going to go potentially for a win is Luke Rowe, because he's just such a master at looking after everybody else. So he generally tends to do a lot of work, even if it's just burning nervous energy, in marshalling the entire team and making sure they're brought to success. He was busy shouting down the radio at Ethan Hayter yesterday. In the end, they recalibrated and won with Viviani. It's not a bad thing if you've got those many options, is it?
No, when you look at the Ineos lineup here, there aren't any weak riders in there at all. I think when they came here, they'd probably be looking at Magnus Sheffield being their GC hope.
Yep.
Just because he's ridiculously strong almost everywhere. And as you said, if he finds himself in a break, well, now that they have the race lead with Viviani, he can just decide if he's going to work or not, because defending the jersey, an excuse or reason. So that may occur. For the advantage that Ineos have got now is that with the race lead, they'll be on the front naturally going into the climbs. So it gives Viviani a bit of sliding room. My
view of the finale today with this, we're 50 kilometres from, oh hello, here's your King of the Mountains now with such a narrow lead at the top. Oh, that was a nice throw, and it is Rinkov Adva that have gone for it. So Marvin Hammerschmidt is indeed opening his account here. Well, there's a couple of categorised climbs. There were more yesterday, so at least if he thinks he's going to get himself up in the breakaway, more often than not, then, he's assembling his right to fight within that competition. So Hammerschmidt takes the first of our King of the Mountains. We'll have another one later on. 3 sprints today. In fact, the next intermediate sprint's going to kind of come as a like ground rush, really. It'll be with us before you know it. In fact, this day, I think, will skittle away quite nicely because of the geography that we're dealing with. They've evenly spaced all of those action points for us. Well, it was a good old battle. I like that. They've now got to make friends and get on with the job of being in the breakaway, Pippa.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a swerve between them there to, I don't know how you could say that, to kind of intimidate each other, but it doesn't work.
No, didn't quite work. We saw yesterday some real naughtiness in the intermediate sprints, some real cutting moves, but no sanction. Just look at this crest. I mean, somebody gets 50 pence for seeing the water coming over the top here. But it is absolutely beautiful countryside to reach for the bike. And not that much of a gap, despite the pace up. Mind you, it suddenly jumped from 1 minute 18 to 1:30. It can't quite decide what the gap is just for the time being, but what we do know is it's 63 kilometres from home. So, the last couple of hills. Yeah, let's see. Who's going to go on the attack? Well, Mohoric most definitely will. One of them's categorised, one of them is not. We might have a headwind as well by the time we get there. So 1,600 metres at 7% at the last. How significant is that distance with that percentage, Pippa?
that's a really good springboard for anybody who wants to kind of split the race up or think about going solo, because from there to the circuit is about 5 kilometers downhill. So if it's even slightly technical, you can be out of sight, hopefully. And if it really depends on the pace that it happens in going into the climb. If they go in there flat out, then there'll be groups everywhere. If they go in there and it's kind of fight for position, because it turns out it's going to be a small road, then it's a bit more difficult for the race to kind of be blown apart by that. It's been relatively easy as well. You can see by the kind of environment here that Ineos are on the front just riding along, and everybody else is just waiting for the last hour, the last 30 minutes of racing to kind of fully get involved with it.
I think if you're going to be on the front on any day, it's possibly today. Last thing you want is wide open, arrow straight highway. This has got a rise and fall to it, the terrain here, because essentially we're on the coastal road, which is rather nice. Here's how your King of the Mountains went. Hammer Schmidt taking the 3 points ahead of Kashbar and Cora. Yeah, let's just go back to that peak. We will talk about it later on, but just for now, the sort of people who can get over it, of course Matej Mohoric is going to attack it. I think Magnus Sheffield will probably go with him.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not really a climber's thing, you know, that it'll be 3-4 minutes at the most. So it's more kind of peak power thing that's going to happen. So it's not going to be something for like Eddie Dunbar, who's more of a kind of small climber. And it's going to be one of those. Even Alexander Kristoff could get over it in good condition. So somebody who's won Tour of Flanders. It's that kind of situation.
Well, he's done well in Arctic Race of Norway in the past, which has had a lot of little peaks just before the last. So yeah, don't be surprised if indeed the great Norwegian, the Viking, is up there. I'm going to disagree with you very gently. I've got a feeling that Eddie Dunbar is in that mode where he's got to go for everything, because he had such a disappointing Vuelta. I think instinctively he's going to. And I wouldn't be surprised if Eddie Dunbar is a feature when we get to that little peak at the end. I know, and I completely understand your argument, but a little part of my heart says that Eddie Dunbar is in that, to hell with this kind of mode.
Well,
if he does it.
If we're going to play one against the other, then Oscar Onley is going to go for the top of him. So Oscar Onley is probably a little bit better at positioning himself there, but the SM, they're always really very good at that. So if he's got the legs, he's still in the game. So
agreed. So now we think that it's going to be Ethan Hayter. No, sorry, Magnus Sheffield, Oscar Onley, Eddie Dunbar, and Matej Mohoric. So we're going to stick with those four. They're going to go for it on that climb. And Eddie Dunbar is going to think, maybe I picked the wrong day. But